what the big deal about Cracker Jack is. Did you ever go and buy a pack of Cracker Jack thinking you're going to get a prize and find no prize in the box?
You got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me.
Freehand is beating his net at the plate. Crawford is over there watching. Good see, sir. You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on. Oh, I must be in the front row.
Hey, how's everyone doing out there? Welcome to a Word Hole Media presentation of our latest format, Enemy of My Enemy. I am MV Fulkin Pete.
I'm Ryan. You are not in the hole with Major League A-holes. You are in the hole with Enemy of My Enemy, I guess. Is that what?
The bunker? Are you in the bunker?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. We'll figure this out. But yeah, this might be our biggest change since we started a podcast. We've changed things up from time to time, added teams. We added the Giants and added the fucking A's eventually. We're changing things drastically. It seemed time for the change after 6 years as a podcast and 15 years as a blog.
Yes.
I guess start with the history lesson that nobody really gives a shit about, but it's a little explanation of what's going on. Major League Assholes was originally my fantasy baseball team name in 2004. That came from a quote from our former president, George W. Bush. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but on a campaign trail, he was caught on a hot mic disparaging a national reporter, calling him that guy's a major league asshole. I just always thought that was hilarious to catch either a sitting president or a presidential candidate swearing like that. I'd never heard the term major league asshole, but I knew exactly what he meant, and I thought it was perfect for at least a fantasy baseball team name. Then it became our fantasy league name the next year, and it was versions of that for years going forward. But when we started the blog, it's like, well, shit, why don't we just be called Major League Assholes? Because we're typically assholes towards each other while we're talking about our baseball allegiances. So it just has worked. The first time we noticed some censorship in that name and how it could be problematic is Facebook wouldn't allow me to use the name assholes in our page title. So it had to be a-holes, which was fine. That's eventually what we landed on in general. But so that was the first instance of censorship. Another instance, controversial. We're not entirely sure how we lost our first YouTube page entirely, but I have a feeling it has something to do with the name. Probably not the name, but may have to do with a particular user on YouTube that didn't like a comment I made. Cool Hand Luke Skywalker, living in his mom's basement, most likely, got upset about something I said. Possibly Trevor.
It's probably about living in his mom's basement.
I think he didn't like that. Trevor Bauer, potentially, he was our reigning asshole of the week when he was at the height of his controversy, and was not happy about a lot of things. We thought maybe he was the culprit, but I think what really had a lot to do with why we lost our YouTube page is all of the copyrighted music I was lifting for different intros and all sorts of stuff, teasers, without permission. And I didn't even get a notice from YouTube back then. That was about 5 years ago after we started the podcast that our page was gone. I didn't get a notice, you have these strikes against you, fix this, this, and this. No, the page was just fucking gone. All the content we'd spent time updating. Fortunately, that was just the YouTube side. The podcast still lit. Well, similarly, I got a notice last week from Spotify, who is our podcast producer. It's the platform we use to upload everything that distributes it to all the different platforms. Yada, yada, yada. They informed me that we were in violation of copyright, specifically Denis Leary's asshole. And I find that ironic in many ways. When we first started the blog, podcasts were around, but I had no fucking idea how to set up a podcast. I don't think the technology made it very easy, but I always had the idea that this would turn into a podcast. And if we did turn it into a podcast, I always wanted Denis Leary's asshole to be the intro and outro. And that's exactly what eventually happened. It took me 9 years to figure out how to make a fucking podcast, or maybe the technology finally caught up to make it easy enough for dumb fucks like us to get on the air. But So I just always had that in my mind. And then I get this notification last week from Spotify that Denis Leary's Asshole was the flagged music that is they asked me to remove specifically. It was like 10 episodes, which I think is hilarious. Because all 175 of our episodes has that song at the beginning and the end. So they flagged 10. They removed our latest episode 175 was removed last week. I don't know if you noticed that. I reposted the YouTube version, which does not contain any copyrighted material. The YouTube's That's how we got our YouTube page back. Is I stopped putting any kind of potentially troublesome material. It's all us and some generic asshole chant at the beginning and end. So that's how we've skated by that. But so that just leads to basically they only removed the one episode, but they flagged 10. They're still there, but they're going to remove all of our episodes. It's what it's going to come down to. The artificial intelligence got smart enough to finally see it on spot, or maybe the Spotify's policies changed. I'm not sure how this is now happening now, but regardless, you and I have talked about changing things up a little bit. It just seemed time, but I just found it ironic that of all people, Denis Leary is the demise of our own Major League assholes, Major League a-holes. So I'm gonna make Denis Leary our final asshole of the week. I just thought that would be too appropriate. I mean, I'm literally going to call this Denis Leary is an asshole. And I think he would agree. The other part of this is Denis Leary ripped off that song, that whole bit from Louis C.K. I don't know if you know that whole story, but that's been documented. And Louis C.K. is problematic in his own ways and certainly an asshole. But so I just find the whole thing ironic. I guess we were looking for a change just to shake things up. It's time. So that's it for the history lesson, I guess. So congratulations, Denis Leary. You are our final asshole of the week. So enemy of my enemies, where we landed. You and I brainstormed a few weeks ago, and we were talking about different things and changing the format up. And ran a few ideas by you, and then I came up with a few more, and then landed an enemy of my enemy. The old Confucius wisdom, or Cao Tzu, or whatever. Sun Tzu, sorry. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I thought about that. There's something hostile about that, but there's something friendly about it too, which kind of describes this podcast in a way, our baseball allegiances. Because of course you and I are old friends.
Yes.
We are definitely enemies. Our teams are enemies on the field. And the more I thought about it, I think I'm a lifelong Tigers fan and became a Cubs fan when I was 16 years old. Visited my aunt and uncle in Chicago who were Cubs season ticket holders. And they took me to a Cubs game, and I had never been anywhere but Tiger Stadium. That was the first stadium I'd ever went to. Other than that was Wrigley Field. And this is weird to think about, but I didn't know a whole lot about the National League just because there weren't that many games on TV. The Tigers never played a National League team except for in the World Series. So I was kind of divorced from the National League in general. So it was kind of easy just to pick the Cubs. But also beyond that, I hated the White Sox. I've talked about this many times. When I was 10 years old, I started hating the White Sox because that's when I first got into baseball card collecting. I have the whole 1983 Fleer collection. But I hated the White Sox uniforms. I had those 83s. I love them now. I think they're super cool. But for whatever reason, as a 10-year-old kid, I hated them. I hated Lamar Hoyt's name, his face, his beard, all of that. I just hated everything about the White Sox. So it was easy to pick the Cubs when I first went to Wrigley and then eventually moved to Chicago in 1997. That was an easy. So I think I've kind of picked the Cubs because they're the enemy of my enemy, which I never thought that deeply about it. But so that brings us to the next new change. Well, let me explain a little bit about the technology side of this, or not the tech side, but the branding name. So I was going to register. We got to have a new website. We don't have to, but I want a new website, new social media handles, all that. So I went to register Enemy of My Enemy, which was available, believe it or not, on GoDaddy for $3,000. So I could have had enemy of our enemy of my enemy.com for if I had $3,000 to pony up. That is out of the question. So I'm like, well, let's make this simpler. Well, I wonder if enemy.com is available. It was. Can you imagine that?
That is bizarre to me that was available, but enemy of my enemy, I guess because it's a catchphrase.
Well, it's available too, but enemy.com was $75,000.
Oh my God.
So we could have done that. That is available. That is a choice I made unilaterally. Sorry I didn't consult you, but I chose not to go with spending $75,000 on enemy.com. Enemy baseball was taken. I don't even know what that is, but enemy ball was available. And guess how much that cost?
$3.50.
1 cent.
1 cent
for the first year, $22 for years 2 and 3 beyond that. So I landed on enemy ball, and it was
1 cent. That's about the only thing you could get for a penny these days, by the way.
Yeah.
You found the one thing
it was
in
obvious.
America, in the world right now, you can get for a fucking penny.
Yeah, that's how worthless his name is, I guess, is what it comes down to.
How fitting for us.
Yeah. So that's why the name of the podcast is Enemy of My Enemy, but all our social and web handles are Enemy Ball. It's either at Enemy Ball or enemyball.com on the web. So you don't have to, if you're a follower, thank you for following us and listening to all this droning. You don't have to change anything. I just changed all the names of our existing accounts. So we're just now called Enemy Ball. You can find us obviously on the web at enemyball.com. You'll notice it looks fairly similar to our previous majorleagueaholes.com website. Just a little bit of a facelift and some new branding, but it all works the same, where you can get to all of our different channels. So podcast platforms, our YouTube channel, all of our social. You can get back to our old blog even, where I still post all the segments. You can get to all that at enemyball.com. So I guess the final big change is we added a new team that, well, it's going to make some sense once you everything makes sense, at least to me and to you, and maybe not anybody else, but
yeah, but
I guess that's all that matters. So we added the Milwaukee Brewers.
Brew Crew.
And I think you got a little explanation of how we arrived to that.
Yeah. So we kind of hinted at this we've been doing podcasts so sporadically. It was probably like 2 months ago, but
yeah, I think it was in August.
Yeah, we started to hint at, a possible realignment of teams. And I had thrown out, what about, why don't I take on the Milwaukee Brewers? I've always liked the Brewers. I've always enjoyed going to the new ballpark. I didn't like County Stadium very much, but the new ballpark.
You went to County at one point?
Yeah, one time to watch the White Sox. My dad and I went up there, but that was kind of a dump, really. I mean, there's no other way.
I've seen pictures. It did not look very good.
No, it was not. But they got it right the second time. I don't think they could have gotten any more correct. And my major step forward with the Brewers was last year, 2024. I had that horrible experience at the White Sox games with my kids over spring break, where they had us go to the ballpark.
That's right.
The game was supposed to start in about 20 minutes. And around that mark, as we walked through the gates and the snow was starting to dissipate, but it had been snowing all morning, they said the game is canceled. They made us all go down to the ballpark. Anyway, you can hear the story on an earlier podcast, but it was a really piss poor experience that the White Sox provided. The only way we were able to see baseball that week, because the weather was so horrible in the Midwest, was we went up to Milwaukee, where they were intelligent enough when they rebuilt their ballpark to put a roof on it, a retractable roof. And we had quite an enjoyable experience. And my kids were even like, well, this is really fucking cool. And the tickets were cheaper. The food was cheaper. You got to trek up an hour and a half, but The experience is so much fun that Robin and I had said, you can actually become we could become Brewers fan.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, it's the same. Yeah. The same. It was easy for me to jump into the Cubs because they were not, they're a completely different league from the Tigers. So you a lifelong Sox fan. It's not the Brewers used to be in the American League. I believe you were in the same division.
Yeah, we were.
But I would think those allegiance or those rivalries have gone away. So yeah, it seemed natural.
Yeah,
you mentioned it.
And then the idea that they, piss all over the Cubs for the last 3 fucking years in the NL Central.
It's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, but the Cubs are so envious of the Milwaukee Brewers. They think the reason the Brewers won was because of their manager. But the harsh reality of that is not the case, as we've seen with the Cubs. So they snatched their manager, and the Cubs have yet to have any real fruitful results from that.
The Brewers only get better.
Yes. The Brewers won their most games over the last run of the NL Central without Craig Counsell. So there you go. But
that's the other extension of enemy of my enemy is my friend. I mean, you obviously hate the Cubs, so why not go after the nemesis of the North Side, the Brewers? I mean, it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and let's be honest. If the Sox were to hightail it out of town and I had to adopt a nearby team.
Oh, you've had to think about this. I didn't even realize
it would naturally be the Brewers because, as you and I both noted, if we didn't have local teams or we were coming from out of the country into America, it would be the fucking Brewers because it's the coolest name of all the teams.
Beer theme. The logo is fucking cool.
Yes.
It's good. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it is, they kind of got it all right. They have a $4 fucking menu at the fucking ballpark. Who does that? No major league team in our markets anyway. But I wanted to, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Milwaukee Brewers, I wanted to just kick off this inaugural podcast of Embracing the Brewers with a quick little Brewers history. And then the reason, even more so than my love for the Cubs of adopting the Brewers, but really record-wise and more than geographical, why they fit so well with this fucking this podcast. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. So let's just do a quick little history. In 1970, the Seattle Pilots relocated to Milwaukee, courtesy of Bud Selig, who we all later on went on to not like so much as the commissioner of baseball. Of course, they adopted the name Brewers, as we already talked about, because of the rich brewing history of Milwaukee. And having gone to Milwaukee several times in my life, probably about a dozen or so, I've taken brewery tours up there. It's awesome.
It's a cool little town.
It is a cool little town. Very reasonably priced. You can get a lot out of your dollar in Milwaukee. Bernie the Brewer, I don't know if you knew this, but Bernie the Brewer, their mascot, who slides down the beer slide, I guess we'll call it, at the
that part I knew.
Brewer game, was actually modeled after a fan who camped out at the old stadium scoreboard in 1970 to encourage attendance. So apparently the whole Bernie the Brewer comes from an actual fan who sat on top of the scoreboard at Old Shitty County Stadium and tried to encourage people to come to the games.
Oh my God.
So I guess that's the whole idea of like sliding down the slide because he was on top of the scoreboard. More liquor tie-ins. In 82, the Brewers nickname for that team was the Harvey Wallbangers because of their manager's name, who was Harvey something or other. But of course, a Harvey Wallbanger is a famous alcoholic beverage.
I don't think I've ever had one.
They hit 216 home runs that year.
It's pretty good.
And now we'll get into the reason why they're so perfect for this podcast. One, they will be the only team on this podcast to never have won a World Series, but that seems to be almost fitting for this podcast because it's rare air for this podcast to have a World Series champion. as I pointed out, they have won, however, the last 3 NL Central championships. Let's start. They have 11 playoff appearances, and their overall lifetime record is 489. The oldest of our teams on here is, of course, the Cubs, who actually formed as the Chicago White Stockings back in 1876. Over that lifespan, they have 22 playoff appearances, 3 world championships, and you'll start to see the fittingness of this, a 513 over their team since 1876. They've won just over 500 games. Yes, the White Sox, who formed in 1901, as did the Tigers, have
charter members of the American League.
Yes, have 11 playoff appearances. Sound familiar? Yes, we just heard that from the Brewers. They have 3 championships, and of course, mirrored in mediocrity, have a 498 winning percentage. So they're right there, almost 500. And the Tigers, the cream of the crop of, and that's not saying much, of this podcast, 18 playoff appearances, 4 championships, and a 503 lifetime winning percentage. So you can see how the Brewers just kind of nestle in perfectly with the rich history of winning of this podcast, the rich historic history of the teams in winning on this podcast. So,
well, that's great. I didn't know you had all that history and statistics prepared. So I love it. Yes, that makes perfect sense. Beyond the geography and everything else, and the nemesis of the West side. I think it makes perfect sense. You brought it up a couple months ago. I love the idea of changing things up. It made a lot of sense. We've had 2 teams on the West Coast, which is kind of a disconnect for us for a while. I think putting Milwaukee in favor of our West Coast friends. Sorry to see you guys go, but I think it makes perfect sense, and I think it's gonna be so much fun going forward. Because shit, I wish we had tried this earlier, or maybe a couple of years ago, because you would have had a fucking field day with how the Brewers just always find a way to be better than the Cubs, no matter what, no matter all the advantages the Cubs have over a franchise like Milwaukee. They fail every fucking time, and it's only getting worse.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I'm going to enjoy it at least one more year, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, the Brewers did make it further in the playoffs than any of our teams, at the expense of the Chicago Cubs. Imagine that.
Yeah, but that turned out to be quite a series that looked like it was going to be a put you out of your misery early series. The Cubs managed to, they got those 2 home game wins, but just couldn't pull it out in the final game.
Yeah, it came down to game 5. That's going to be a theme of this podcast: failures in game 5 for my teams. Yeah, I mean, I think it was 3-1 was the final. It was on a Saturday night. There's all sorts of. It was weird. And there's so much going on the weekend, and then there's no real sports talk radio until Monday to even talk about it. So it was almost like we had all the college games, all the NFL games, and then it's like, oh yeah, the Cubs fucking lost.
Yeah.
Of course. Go ahead.
And then the Brewers went on to the NLCS, and
did they? I'm not sure they actually showed up for any of those games.
Well, they were outscored 15-4. They had a consistency. They put up a picket fence, but it wasn't far enough because it was 1-1-1. They scored 1 run in each game. This is where you see this is the difference, right? This is where you see the $400 million team essentially versus a mid-market, team and organization who somehow gets the most out of their players, right? That's the thing. That's the thing about the Brewers. They get the most out of their players, but at a certain point, as we've seen with all of our teams on our podcast, when you don't add those final 1 or 2 pieces to elevate you to that level, to be that player who's gonna take you where you need to go, like why the Cubs only got as far as they did, while the Tigers only got as far as they did, why the White Sox rebuild ultimately failed because they never invested in any true veteran talent to complement those young players.
The last push to get over this.
Yes. the last push to get over the top is a common theme for every one of these teams we talk about in this podcast. Our front offices don't ever really do it. And that's what came through in the Milwaukee Dodger series. Now, game 4, I'm going to chalk up. I mean, that's like that's the Michael Jordan fucking game right there that Shohei Ohtani delivered. That is going to me. I don't think we will, outside of him doing it again, will ever see a greater single performance in a playoff game.
If we were going to continue, and we might continue our badass of the week, or maybe in some other brand, I was thinking about doing that, for just take all of our playoff, our 3 teams at least made the playoffs. We'd compare their stats, individual player stats in the playoffs. But it's like, why are we even talking about this? Because Shohei Ohtani is the fucking badass of the week, a badass of the year, badass of the century, badass of the history of baseball, potentially. I mean, history of sports, I've heard brought up. Is that the greatest performance in the history of sports?
I mean, it's pretty good.
Be 3 home runs, 6 innings pitched, which is whatever, but he had 10 strikeouts in that. I think he was shut out. He gave up 1 run, I guess. But in a pennant clinching game, like, to be as money can be in the most important moment, you can't do better than that.
No,
Ohtani did. I've heard some people like maybe compare it to a Bo Jackson. I don't remember him having.
No, I mean,
not in one game at least. Obviously, he couldn't because he was incredible baseball and football player. But it's not going to happen on the same day. Maybe Deion Sanders. He had a game. I think it may have even been against the Cowboys, like one of his first games back, where he had an interception for a touchdown, a punt return for a touchdown, and a reception for a touchdown. But that's cool, but it's nowhere near what Ohtani did. My God, yeah. So if we were going to retire, if we're retiring things or changing things up, badass of the week would be a good to end on that note.
Yeah, holy shit. I mean, that was. You said it best. It's just like it was, there's nothing there's nothing you can do. I mean, there's just nothing you can do.
No, it's just men against boys at that. Like, aliens versus humans at that point. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know that the World Series is going to go much different, but maybe.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. The Blue Jays won Game 7, which after the Tigers lost to the Mariners, I never develop in most playoff series. You develop a hatred for the other team, or at least other players, which maybe I do for Leo Rivas, but the Mariners, who I'd never heard of before in the long line of Tiger killers.
Yeah, I was gonna say all your Tiger killers are all based on Marco Scutaro, basically.
Marco Scutaro, journeyman, who became the most dangerous hitter on the planet for your Giants, certainly in the World Series. Long line. Leo Rivas is the newest. The Guardians had a couple guys that really annoyed me that I'd never heard of before, but fortunately the Tigers vanquished them. But I don't know. Did you have a rooting it? Or are you happy that Toronto's in versus the Mariners?
No, I wanted the Mariners in because that was my prediction. The Mariners were going to win the World Series. Yeah, Mariners against the Phillies.
Our Nostradamus predictions are out the window. But mine were, I think I had Boston winning it all, which is true. They were out.
I mean, at the end of the day, do I really care outside of that? No.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you look at this game, like, I think nobody wants the Dodgers to win except for maybe the country of Japan, because they have so many Japanese athletes on the team, and they're playing Canada. So it's like it's Japan versus Canada is the way I see this World Series, which is apropos for a World Series.
Yes.
But I'm not sure. I'll be watching, and I'll be rooting for the Blue Jays, I guess. I do have a tie-in because Vlad Jr. and Bo Bichette, who is now coming back finally for the World Series after an injury, both former Lansing Lugnuts, my hometown team that I actually still work for. I made a bunch of magazine covers and all sorts of graphics back in 2017 when they were both 2016 and 2017 when they were both with the Lugnuts here in Lansing. So, and I've actually seen some pictures circulating of them wearing their Lugnuts gear, which I designed, by the way. We changed our uniforms in 2017. And I got to design some hats and uniforms, so it's kind of cool seeing all that. So I'm definitely rooting for the Blue Jays. Again, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I guess. So settle for the Blue Jays over the Dodgers, but I don't think it's going to be particularly competitive. Although the one ray of hope I saw in a blurb on the Athletic, if you want to believe that the Blue Jays have reason for hope, is the Dodgers have been off they're going to be off for over a week, I think, before the series starts on Friday. And that's happened, and the Blue Jays went to 7 games. And that scenario has happened 4 times in Major League history, where one team sweeps and is waiting for their opponent in the World Series while the other team goes 7 full games. And in all 4 instances in history, the team that had to go 7 games in the championship series won the World Series, which is kind of amazing. What's even more amazing is 2 of those 4 times were my Detroit Tigers, who swept the ALCS, only to have to wait for the Cardinals in 2006 and your Giants in 2012. And both times had the offense just collapsed. There was no rhythm. There was whatever it was, the layoff I've blamed for years. It just works. So I guess that's I have personal. We both have personal knowledge, painful in my case, glorious in your case, how this can work out. So there is some hope for the Blue Jays, at least. I guess while we're talking playoffs, I haven't really talked much about my Tigers flame out in the division series against the aforementioned Mariners. Really good series. Obviously, Game 5, the deciding game, was a classic.
Unbelievable series. Like I actually felt bad for you that weekend, and I'm going to tell you, it was like
Yeah.
I looked at Robin and I said, when the Lions lost on Sunday night, I think it was.
Oh God!
I was like, this
Michigan State lost. Football.
I said,
I was at that game. Yeah.
This
Go
is
ahead.
the worst. This is the worst sports weekend of Smitty's life. This
was
the worst sports weekend of Smitty's life. But the good news is, now that this Lions game is over, he can turn the page. He can move forward.
Yeah, and I have. I think that's why we haven't recorded for a while, because I've been in the fetal position. The Tigers put me through that for the last 2 months of the season, not being able to score a fucking run, but somehow barely squeaking into the playoffs. Last weekend, Tigers lose in 15 innings and get knocked out of the playoffs. I went to the Michigan State game the next morning, and they got blown out by UCLA of all teams. I think Michigan even lost, which I'm not a Michigan football fan or basketball fan.
Michigan.
Yeah. The Lions lost. Oh, Saturday night, the Cubs get knocked out.
Yes. Yeah. Don't forget that.
The Lions get fucked by the referees, who absolutely love Patrick Mahomes, which I can't stand people that complain about referees, but at some point you have to complain about refereeing because they got so many preferential calls. And there's I think universities are writing papers about how the preferential treatment is so obvious for the Chiefs. This is a baseball podcast. I digress, but so fortunately, I've had a week to decompress, over a week now.
It was so bad, we rebranded our entire podcast.
Yeah. That's what I spent a lot of the week doing. That was my therapy. I love branding. I love creating logos, creating new brands, brainstorming new names, new logos. All that was therapeutic to me. So I should have mentioned that in the first section, but you're right. That is a huge part of it. It was a good distraction for me. So, and I've spent an inordinate, an unhealthy amount of time doing this. So I guess that would explain it. But getting over last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, that Game 5 of the ALDS in Seattle, it's just kind of a microcosm of everything that's happened to the Tigers for the last 2 months of the season, relying on Tarik Skubal, who came up the ace that he is, only giving up the 1 run. But going 15 innings, I was so drained. It wasn't even the devastating moment when they actually lost that it could have been. I went to bed. It was 1 a.m. when they brought out Tommy Canley for the 15th. I'm like, I'm not doing this. Actually, Tanner was here. He showed up because we were going to the tailgating for the Michigan State game the next day. He showed up about 10 o'clock Friday night.
Okay.
That Friday night. And when he said he was going to be here that late, I'm like, well, maybe he'll catch the last inning or so of the Tigers game at least. He caught like 9 more innings of the game because there's so much fucking baseball. And it's just like, well, we're getting up at 6 a.m. to get to the parking lots by 7, so we can start the grills up and be all tailgated out by 11 a.m. and then walking over to the stadium. So we had that in the back of our heads, like we're getting up at fucking 6 a.m. It was 1 a.m. before I called him, like I'm going to bed, dude. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, especially when Tommy Kahnle came out, you knew what was going to happen. The craziest thing though is the Tigers would have made the AL Championship Series if they had one more hit. They had so many opportunities to score in almost every one of those extra innings. They had runners in scoring position every time, and they could not get that one final hit. And that it's just excruciating. And it does come back to what you said. They like all of our teams don't seem to make the last move, to the final thing to push them over the top. The Tigers could have added more at the trade deadline than they did. People say they didn't add anything. That's totally false. Kyle Finnegan was a tremendous asset. He did get hurt, but he did return. He was a great closer, and he had a few issues in the playoffs, but minor compared to that of Tommy Kahnle or the others they had to rely on. But they didn't add the bat that everyone wanted. Ironically enough, Eugenio Suarez, who was a
White Sox.
Well, he was a Tiger before that. I mean, it's amazing. And then he's the guy
I meant,
that,
like, wasn't he rumored to? Was that the Bob?
That was a guy from the. I know who you're talking about. That's a guy from the Mets, I think. No, it was a different guy from the Diamondbacks. But
okay.
But no, Eugenio Suarez was one of the prospects the Tigers gave up in 2017 or 2016 or whatever. They were still going for it. But the irony also is that was the player that a lot of fans wanted the Tigers to get at this trade deadline. And of course, he goes to the Mariners. Now, mind you, he did not do much against the Tigers in that series. He did much more against the Blue Jays in the championship series than he ever did against the Tigers. So that didn't necessarily bite us in the ass the way I thought it would. But so yeah, the Tigers are out of it. The big question now is what to do with Tarik Skubal. And I was kind of amazed how quickly Tigers fans and media in general is like, well, you just got to trade him. You know, they're not going to pay him. There's no chance that they're just going to run it back. You have to get something for him. I kind of feel like the Tigers are in a really good spot in a way. They have a lot of options. I don't think they have to do anything. The way it's being portrayed in the media or fans calling into Detroit Sports Talk Radio are framing it. I think they've got 3 good options, and I could live with any of them. If they get the right deal to trade him this offseason, let's do it. I just read a thing on either The Athletic or MajorLeagueBaseball.com, comparing similar situations. The Corbin Burns 2 years ago, Garrett Crochet last year. What kind of return could the Tigers reasonably ask for or expect for Skubal? 1 year of service for Skubal, but he is probably going to be the 2-time reigning Cy Young Award winner. I think this is a little bit unprecedented. So whatever we've seen happen before, I think he could blow out of the water for a return. What I just saw on MLB.com was they're thinking 3 or 4 top 100 prospects for 1 year of service from Skubal. And if those are the right prospects, I could live with that. I think Tigers fans could live with that. There's 2 main teams I've seen connected to this, and that could actually fulfill that would be the Mets and the Boston Red Sox. Both have 4 top 100 prospects that might be appealing. I think 4 is probably a bit of a reach considering Garrett Crochet only got 2 prospects, 2 top 100, Kyle Teal, and I forget the other guy, the other Montgomery.
Yeah.
I think is who he got. So I think we could get more than that. So I think 3 top 100 prospects would be it. But the Mets could do it, and the Mets could also do it and then have the wherewithal and the resources to sign Skubal for whatever extension he wants. I think that's realistic. The Red Sox, they could do the same thing. They've got 4 top top 100 prospects that they can move. Tigers have to get a top 20 pitching prospect back is the key to all this. And I think both the Red Sox and the Mets could do that. I think they have those. So I think it's realistic. And I think that's palatable. I think Tigers fans could understand it, and I think it could help the organization. I think they could become a better team. Maybe not next year, but I think down the road I think it would help the organization. They already have arguably the best farm system there is. And that's there's more top talent matriculating to the major league club next year. Kevin McGonigal, namely, maybe the best hitting prospect the Tigers have ever had. He should be in the infield someplace next year. The key is the rotation, which obviously would take a massive hit losing Tarik Skubal. So that kind of leads me to the second option is just holding on to him. Just run it back. Lay it all on the line. Let's go for a fucking World Series while we have the best pitcher on the planet. Not, if we don't get that offer, that offer you can't refuse, the Godfather offer, run it back. Like, let's just see. It's not like the Tigers have zero resources. Why not sign another top pitching free agent out there? Maybe Dylan Cease, maybe Framber Valdez. Why can't they attract that? They have enough money to get somebody like that. Technically, they probably have enough money to get Skubal back, but they're not. You just know they're not going to spend it. But why not run it back, bolster the rotation, add some more offensive depth? Just say, hey, we're going for it in 2026, especially considering how different the baseball landscape could look in 2027 and beyond, as we have this labor strife looming. And most likely there's going to be a salary cap, which means everything is going to be radically different. So the Tigers not extending Skubal and just running it back for this final season might make perfect sense in an uncertain landscape going forward. I think I would be on board with that. If things aren't going well, they could trade him at the trade deadline and maybe get some of that back. If things are going great, hell yeah, we'll just run it back, head to the playoffs again in another weak NL or AL Central Division. I think that's a realistic possibility. I don't hear many people talking about, oh, you got to get something for him. I mean, technically we would get a compensatory end of the first round pick if he left as a free agent in 2027, which is something, I guess, not what we're looking for, but I'm willing to gamble that for a potential shot at a World Series while you have the best pitcher in the world. The final and least likely option is to extend him, which, I mean, there's already reports that the Tigers and Skubal's camp are $250 million apart. There was a rumor that last year's branded uncompetitive offer was 4 years, $100 million. So it sounds like the Boris and Skubal camp is asking for $350 million and who knows how many years. Of course, all these rumors, the big thing came out last week from John Heyman reported. Well, he's not getting that information from the Tigers. He's getting that information from Scott Boras, who's trying to create a market for his client. So those numbers are ridiculous. $350 million, that would be the highest paid pitcher of all time. The current highest paid pitcher is Garrett Cole, which I think is $325. He got hurt at the beginning of the year, didn't pitch at all, and the Yankees fucking flamed out. So how is that? I mean, obviously the Yankees can absorb that, but it doesn't work when you pay pitchers that much for that long term. Skubal turns 29 next month, so he'll be in his 29 year season. I don't see him getting better after next year. Do you? I mean, how I think the Tigers timed this perfectly. They're getting the absolute best years out of Skubal they possibly could, and if they tried to extend him, I think there's diminishing returns on that for whoever gets him. I think he's going to be a very good pitcher going forward, but I think we're seeing the peak, and maybe next year and maybe further down, but whatever the Tigers would be paying for down the road would be sub what we're used to with Skubal, not the 2-time Cy Young Award potentially winner. So I don't mind if the Tigers aren't going to pay an outrageous amount that Scott Boras just decides that's the market. And if some ridiculous club like the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, whoever just decide to pay him down the road, fine. I don't think it's going to work out for them. They can absorb it. The Tigers just can't the same way those super clubs can. So I think it's going to be a weird offseason. I think it's going to be interesting because Skubal is definitely top of mind. I mean, he's one of the top headlines on my MLB lineup email that came in this morning, despite the World Series on the horizon. So Skubal's going to be a big story that we'll be talking about in this offseason. And I'm kind of cool with any direction it ends up going.
Yeah, I think the difference, back to an earlier comment you made over Crochet and Skubal, is Crochet, despite his performance, is still kind of an unknown because of coming off the surgery, having the limited innings count.
And this is his first real full season, and he performed.
So Boston
last year he could have gotten a lot more.
Right. It's almost as if the Sox had the wherewithal to extend him.
Yeah.
And got the year that the Red Sox got out of him, then traded him.
Yeah.
They would have gotten 3 to 4 prospects like they're talking about with Skubal. And that's why I think they're saying that Skubal numbers double, because you've got a thus far, pretty, he's had a couple minor setbacks, right? I believe, but you've had a pretty injury-free pitcher, 2-time Cy Young Award winner.
Potentially.
The numbers are all there.
Yeah.
He's performed well enough to win the Cy Young.
So you agree with the premise that he is worth 3 to 4, maybe 4 top limit prospects?
I do. I think he's worth double Crochet just because of less of an unknown. And I hate to say this, but I agree with your approach 100%. From a fan standpoint,
this is weird. It's a whole new thing. We're supposed to be enemies now.
Well, I know, but like I'll say this though, from a World Championship starved fan, I like the idea of keeping him and spending the money. Yeah, keeping him for one more year, not extending him, keeping him for one more year and having a go for it year.
Yeah, and I think this is the time to. It's an unprecedented time to be able to do that with probably a work stoppage in 2027. Yes. You can put all your cards in, say fuck the future. We have no idea what it's going to be. Let's go nuts.
Yes. So I don't know. I think either way, the Tigers probably come out in a pretty good fucking position on this. So unless somehow Scott Harris it gets royally fucked up somehow. But I think
if he gets a terrible return, if he does end up trading him, if he gets a lesser prospect haul than I'm proposing, I think that's where things go south. But I don't think he needs to do that. I don't think he needs to feel like he's in a position where he has to do that.
No, exactly. There's a lot of GMs with talented players who are in, positions like the Tigers are, where there's something you don't have to necessarily do anything. Yeah. The balls, I think you have control of it. So
I think the White Sox hand was forced. I don't think Chris Getz could have gotten much more, because what were they going to do? They couldn't just say, "Oh, we're just going to hold on to him." Well, you weren't in a position where it made any sense to hold on to Crochet. So that's where I think things are different. Also, things have aligned really well for the Tigers, considering the two teams that would be very interested in having Skubal and could possibly extend him beyond just trading for him. They have the prospect capital that the Tigers would want. So I think that everything is sort of aligning in a way. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about how Scott Harris is in a position of power. He's not in a position of weakness right now. So I like that.
All right. Do you want to speaking of the elephant in the room, do you want to talk about the future of Kyle Tucker and the Chicago Cubs?
Skipped right over that in my outline. I got too fired up about my Tigers, but I mean, we were talking about Cubs flamed out again at the behest of your Milwaukee Brewers once again. I mean, the brutality of that. The Cubs have every advantage there is over the Brewers, and they refuse to exploit those advantages. They have infinitely more resources than the Brewers could have financially, and they just choose not to use it. And this now coming to a head with the Kyle Tucker situation, which if they wanted to, they could easily sign Kyle Tucker to an extension, and they're not going to do it. And I kind of don't blame them. The Kyle Tucker tenure in Chicago is very odd. He had a great first 2 months where he looked worth every penny of what was rumored to be maybe a 400, 500, $600 million contract, which now sounds laughable considering what has happened over the second half of the season with, through no fault of his own, he had multiple injuries. He had a fractured wrist, fractured hand that he actually played through and played quite well through in June, but then that ended up being maybe a crutch, maybe a real reason, but for his lower production, maybe an excuse. I don't know. And then he got a calf injury late in the year that affected him into the playoffs. The other weird thing about Kyle Tucker is he has basically zero personality. I don't know if do you remember him saying anything this past season? I mean,
no, he's a man of few words,
which is not his fault. It's fine, but he just never. I never got the feeling he embraced Chicago. I don't think Chicago necessarily embraced him, other than his incredible production in the first part of the season. I guess a lot of people are thinking, this guy's just going to want to stay in Chicago. He's going to have so much fun on the north side and Wrigley. I think he did, but you'd never know it by looking at his face or hearing what he said. I've heard lots of people, former Cubs, free agents leaving, they had a blast. They enjoyed their time. They'd like it. I've actually heard Cody Bellinger, who we might be talking about later on this offseason. I think he'd want to come back to the Cubs. He had such a great time. I'm still perplexed to why the Cubs let him go, but I guess I don't know that Cubs fans are all that sad to see Kyle Tucker go. He did officially declare for free agency. He could be re-signed by the Cubs, but he could sign with all 29 other teams. So, and I just think it's far more likely he ends up with the Yankees or Dodgers or some, very predictable place than he would with the Cubs. So I think then you have to look at the Kyle Tucker trade for Cam Smith, Hayden Wesneski, and Isak Paredes as a failure for the Cubs. We talked about it after the trade happened. How are we going to measure this trade? And there are two ways that the Cubs win. Either you and I think came up with, they had to make it to the World Series at least. Or maybe we backed it down to the championship, NLCS, because we knew the Dodgers were looming. So maybe we backed it down to that, which they did come one game away from making the NLCS. But the other way they could win the trade is signing him long term, and I don't think anyone sees that happening at this point. Maybe people aren't too sad about it, but I guess I'm sure you do. But I've come to the conclusion it was a failure.
Yeah, I mean I stick by what we outlined, like you as you just outlined, at the beginning of all this, and I think part of what you were saying, like Kyle Tucker, not warming to Chicago was, I think he knew when he wasn't extended early on that this was it. Why should I embrace Chicago? I'm here for 1 year.
Yeah, there is a mercenary feel to him. I've heard people talk about it, and I kind of agree with it. I think that's what you're illustrating there. I think it's possible that he always went into this with the idea that he wanted to hit free agency. No matter where he went, where he got traded to, it's not the Cubs, even if he absolutely loved being in Wrigley, which he might, we just don't know because he doesn't say much, doesn't express much. I think he just always wanted to be a free agent potentially. So I guess it's going to be interesting. I mean, the funniest part is how they were talking $600 million on the heels of the Juan Soto deal. It's just 700 some million. No one's talking about $600 million anymore. No one's talking 500 million. Some are still talking 400 million, which seems outrageous to me based on this past season. But I don't know. Where do you think there's a chance he gets that kind of money, or where do you think he goes?
Well, I think to your point with a point we've probably talked about more than anyone else is talking about right now is the fact of the looming labor strike.
Yeah.
I don't know that he gets. I think it's going to be one of. Is he Boris too?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I think it's going to be one of those years where Boris gets him that 3-year contract where he gets like
The pillow deal with
40
opt-outs.
million with
Yeah.
opt-outs because of the labor strike. Because
Like
no one, why are you going
Alex
to commit
Bregman.
that money?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why this is gonna be. I mean, this is an unprecedented offseason with that looming. I I think it's gonna be fascinating. I think usually we're crestfallen and struggling through the offseason, finding content for us to talk about. I think we're gonna have no problem finding content for us to be talking about throughout the entire offseason.
And to your point about like going back to the Tigers and going for it, why not? Because this is the year to be able to get these guys on non-long-term contracts because
Yeah,
no one's going to be offering them that.
yeah.
You're going to be getting they're all going to be like these 2 and 3 year deals with opt-outs. That's what everyone's getting. In fact, the landscape will probably be wide open for any team that's looking to make a step forward this year to be able to do that.
I think you're right. I'm kind of fearful of that because those deals don't get done until basically when spring training starts. So this could be the opposite of what I was just thinking. Could be the slowest free agent season we've seen, just because everyone's going to, especially Boris clients, are going to be holding out for multi-year deals, which I think you might be right. The teams are going to be reluctant to sign long-term deals. So I don't know. I hope there's a ton of action and unprecedented moves just because we're in unprecedented times. But yeah, that's kind of a scary scenario if you bring that. I think there's logic to it, but I think in that case, I think we might be having a very quiet free agent season until the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. It's baseball always seems to surprise us. So we'll see we'll see what happens this year.
That's why we're here. Well, I think the final thing on my outline, unless I forgot something else.
No, you didn't. I saved you. Don't worry.
I've had this on my list for a couple months now. It just hasn't been the right time to bring it up. Now is perfect. I bring up Major League expansion about every 5 years since we started the blog. I think 5 years in, I was talking about expanding. A couple years ago, I was talking about it again. So now I'm not just bringing it up out of nowhere. Rob Manfred actually says he wants the final thing of his regime, which ends in 2029. The culminating moment is an expansion once again of Major League Baseball to up to now it would be 32 teams. He wants 2 new teams, which I think makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. It's been 30 years since the last time Major League Baseball expanded, which is ridiculous if you think about it. I mean, that's when the Rays and the Diamondbacks came in. That's the last time they expanded. We've seen expansion in every other league in the United States. Many more teams have been added, especially in the National Hockey League. But I think a reason why it's going to happen is like I just saw the next expansion of the NHL alone. They're talking about expansion fees of $2 billion per team just for the NHL. So what do you think that means for Major League Baseball expansion? Like what those expansion fees might be? I think it makes a lot of sense. It just does for baseball to expand 32 teams. You could have 8 4-team divisions. You could have 4 8-team divisions, however you want to split it up. I think it works. The money is there. I think also, I think we're going to have a devastating 2027, maybe even into 2028 for baseball fans, potentially not having an entire season. And we saw that in 94 and what it took years for baseball to build up its popularity once again, spurred by 1998, the unlikely or maybe very manufactured home run race between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, fueled by steroids, where baseball just looked the other way in favor of TV ratings and popularity. I think it would make perfect sense after just a horrific time that we see on the horizon of no baseball. Expansion could be a really interesting thing for fans, but in new markets, but really for owners to split up, potentially $6-7 billion of expansion fees to kind of recoup some of their losses. So I don't think the timing of Manfred's comments, I think this is now back in August, he was talking about it originally, but I don't think they should have any question why they're coming up now. I think that's a plan to rejuvenate baseball as we anticipate this work stoppage. So I don't know. You've poo-pooed my expansion talks over the years. So I don't know if you're open to expansion now, or what are your thoughts about expansion? Do you think this is a pie in the sky? Well, I guess Manfred is saying it now, at least, is the difference. But what are you in favor of it at least?
My poo-pooing of expansion over the years has always been the fact that, as long as it makes baseball more competitive, then I'm always fine with it. I just always have felt like you already have this, like, you have these like teams who are always seem to be there winning, and then like the rest of baseball, there's just all of the baseball teams. There's more shit than there is than there is good. And are we just, thinning it out even further?
Yeah, that's a great argument. You would be diluting the product because you have to, roster, 50 more players. It gets, every team is that much thinner. There'd be an expansion draft of sorts. So I think that's a valid argument, but I think, go ahead.
Oh, and I was going to say, I mean, the only way to really make it fair, which they would never do because the owners of those top teams would never agree to that, but it's almost like, when they do those, what is it? They have the expansion draft when you're allowed to take, whatever from.
Yeah, I don't know what the parameters
I don't know the parameters, but it's almost like you should only be allowed to take from the top 15 teams or something like that. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, to even out the play, to even even it out,
I think they can make up whatever rules they want. And I think that, again, the looming labor strife, I want to say, it's not a strike. It would be a lockout by the owners. It would not be a player strike.
Right.
I think the landscape is going to be so radically different. They might even write into the new CBA, whenever it is finally agreed upon, what those rules for expansion would be. So maybe it would contain an element of that, but maybe the landscape is so radically different where there is not just a salary cap, but there would be a salary floor, which would stop the ridiculous business practices of teams like the Pirates from just pocketing money and never signing anybody,
right,
not caring about being competitive anymore. Maybe that goes away. And that's kind of the idea of a salary floor is kind of why I'm, for the first time ever, against the players being so reticent to agree to a salary cap. I think there's potential where everyone would make a lot more money if they agreed to a salary cap, if they create a floor. And I think that's where the compromise would be, where maybe we don't lose an entire season if the players could agree to that. So that's where I think it could be mitigated. Your concerns about that could be mitigated if they do implement something smart like that, where they literally write into the rules where you cannot be a piece of shit franchise for decades upon decades, like many have chosen to be. Well, I think the fun part of this is talking about the new franchises, where they could be, and how division realignment could look, which Manfred did speak about. They want to optimize geographic rivalries, but really for a pragmatic reason, to cut down on travel. There's no reason for teams to be traveling all around the country all the time, to play interdivision or interleague games. Why not move the divisions closer to each other, regardless of National League or American League historic affiliations? We got rid of the DH. There's no difference between the leagues anymore. We don't need to separate teams like that anymore. We could have intercity rivals like we've always wanted. We could have the Cubs and White Sox in the same division. We could have the White Sox or the Yankees and the Mets in the same division. Why can't we exploit those, especially for geographic reasons? Cut down on travel. It would help the players not having as much travel through a 162 game season. I think one thing I've brought up a couple times is how the Mariners have always underachieved, it seems like, in the playoffs, because they have by far the most miles traveled every year, because they're in the middle of fucking nowhere and have to play all their games so far away from home. I think that's a big concern. So I think there's logic behind it. And I think there's some excitement behind at least I'm excited. I don't know. I've heard some people that don't like the idea of having the White Sox and Cubs in the same division, but I think it'd be fucking awesome. And it actually dovetails really nicely with this new format of our podcast here, I think there's a potential the 4 teams we cover could be in the same division because it makes sense. It makes perfect sense geographically. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I spent. I obviously have too much spare time in my hands because I put together this potential radical realignment of the major leagues. I put together a couple months ago, but I sent you the list over there. There's a couple variables that we don't know yet. Of course, where the 2 new expansion clubs would be.
Right.
The list right now, and the most likely, I think, at least in the West, would be Portland and now Salt Lake City. I've heard rumored. Portland, I've heard for years, and they've done a lot of work in the city of Portland to bring a franchise there. I don't know how much Salt Lake City has done, but I know Salt Lake City just added a NHL franchise, so I think those are reasonable. They would both fit in my new Western Conference, whatever you want to call it. Then in the East or South, the big names you've heard are Nashville and Raleigh. I think Raleigh's kind of dropped off a little bit. You don't hear about them as much anymore, North Carolina, but Nashville is certainly a hot name.
Yeah, it has been for a while.
One I didn't mention, and it kind of fucks up my whole system, would be Montreal. But Montreal failed so spectacularly as a franchise drawing fans they moved to Washington in 2005, I think it was. So it's just 20 years ago. They did not want baseball. Now they want it again. I don't think it's quite time for them to get another franchise, although it'd be cool to have a Canadian rivalry with the Blue Jays. But I eliminated that just for purposes of this exercise. So I included Salt Lake City or Portland in the West, and then Raleigh or Nashville in the whatever called the East or South or whatever. So do you want to start? I can't remember everything I had listed out geographically, but have you looked at my list? Do you think it makes sense what I'm proposing?
No, okay. I'm joking. I've looked at this. And folks, for those of you listening, it is accurate to say Smitty does have too much time on his hands. When I read this list, I was like, is he got like a dry erase board up and a map?
I'm like connecting strings.
And it's like a beautiful mind almost like over at his place. I really did expect to see a giant map of the United States behind him on the podcast.
I will create
North
a graphic.
America map.
Yes, I will create a graphic for this because the geography, it is based on geography, which is you have to see it to understand it. But if people know U.S. geography enough, I think they'll understand where I'm going with this.
All right, so let's kick this list off. Well, as Smitty teased, there's a Western Conference and an Eastern Conference,
which is the way. That's the way the NHL, the NBA. That's how those are set up, and no one has any problem with that. I think it creates an East Coast, West Coast rivalry almost. It's kind of cooler in a way. The NFL and Major League Baseball have never done that. Doesn't mean they can't. And I think they've hinted at it, and I think it makes sense, especially for all the travel. It works. So I don't know if they'll call it the Western Conference, or maybe let's call one the American League and the other the National League.
Whatever.
However they want to do it, because it's all meaningless now. So,
so in the Northwest Division,
and I'm just naming those geographically, but I think that one makes sense at least.
You've got the Seattle Mariners, the San Francisco Giants, the maybe Las Vegas Athletics. And then, as Smitty said, we don't know where the expansion teams are going to be, but this would be where you pencil in Salt Lake City or Portland. So
I want to lean toward, just for purposes of this, I think Portland would be great because that's obviously a natural rival to the Mariners, which they need somebody close to them. They've been orphaned out in the Pacific Northwest for so long. I think that would make a lot of sense. I've been to Portland a couple times. It's a cool fucking town. I think they're hungry for a major league franchise. They've supported an NBA franchise for decades, so I think they could do it. I like that. The thing I don't like about that particular division is the Giants would not be in the same division with the Dodgers, and I think that's a big problem right there. But I think it makes sense when you get to my next division why the Dodgers aren't in the same division with the Giants.
Yeah, so then next you go the Southwest Division, which is the Dodgers, the Angels, the Padres, and the Diamondbacks.
I think you could, weird realignment. I think Las Vegas would probably make more sense to be in that division, but I didn't have any better place to put the Diamondbacks. But I
Right.
think obviously the intercity rivalry of the Dodgers and Angels makes perfect sense. San Diego's just down the road, and the Diamondbacks have been in that division with three of those teams or two of those teams already. So I think that one makes sense.
Central Division, the juggernaut Colorado Rockies, the fucking Twins, the
Weird ass
Royals.
Minnesota Twins.
Actually, I hate this. This will be the most hated division.
Yeah.
The Rockies, the Twins, the Royals, and the Cardinals in one division. This is the shit division, actually.
Yeah.
That's the name. It's the central shit division.
This is probably the most problematic of the geographical realignment, at least how I put it together, because I didn't want the Twins to be in our fucking division anymore with the Tigers and White Sox. And I thought it makes sense. Colorado is such an outpost too. They're just there's nothing nearby Denver. But putting them with Minnesota, and then it makes no sense really, other than the AL Central former opponents, at least the Royals and Twins being together. But you have to, I think with this idea, you have to put the Cardinals and the Royals in the same division. If we're doing this, let's do it. So, but that comes at the expense of the Cubs-Cardinals rivalry, ancient as it is, 150 years old almost. So that's a thing that I think a lot of Cubs fans would be against. I'm not against it at all. I think as by evidence of our new format, I think the Brewers have usurped that position of Northside nemesis.
Yeah, I believe so too. I feel like that I forgot to mention that when I was doing my Brewers, why they make sense for this podcast. I almost feel like there'll always be that hatred between the Cardinals fans and the Cubs fans, but honestly, it's closer to go to Milwaukee, and with the Brewers always seem to piss in the Cubs' water. I mean, to me, over the last 3 seasons, by far, they are the arch nemesis of every Cubs fan.
I'd push that to a decade. I would push that to post 2017, basically almost a decade. That the Brewers have been the thorn in the Cubs' side versus the Cardinals. I think they're that hatred for the Cardinals will always be there, but I think there's more for the Brewers now, but because they keep fucking up the Cubs, and I think it's great.
I think it goes the other way too. The whole idea that the Milwaukee has to deal with saying that it's Wrigley Field North up there,
they hate that.
like that.
They really don't like that.
They hate it, and it leads to things like what happened. I'm going to go cross sports, but since we're talking about Nashville, and one of the reasons Nashville looks so sweet to baseball is because of how successful the hockey team's been down there for the NHL, and they know that they'll be able to fill a baseball stadium. And I think the Nashville Sounds, the minor league team down there, does pretty good too.
Yeah, they do.
But like Nashville stopped selling tickets to Blackhawks fans.
Yeah,
you were not allowed to buy
geofencing. Yeah. Like if you put in your zip code, they won't let you buy a ticket if you're from Chicago. Which Milwaukee did that, I think, in these playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't know to what extent and how you can do that on the black market, or no longer the black market, the secondary market, because they're all in cahoots now. But
yes,
so yeah, there's geofencing. Yeah, I love that we're changing up the format. I think this is going to be so much fun. We'll get to that. We'll get to that division in a minute here. But so I think you're right. The Central, as I described it, as I've plotted out, Colorado, Minnesota, Kansas City, and St. Louis. It's horrible. It doesn't really work, but I think it's the weakest point of this plan. But I think it's how it would have to go.
Yeah, and I will say to you though, like having the Rockies with KC and St. Louis isn't a stretch, because Robin used to say how like Kansas to Colorado was a trip they would drive, because it's only like I think like 12 hours or something.
They were all in the Big 8 football conference together, basketball conference. So Big 12, I don't know about the Big 12, but
yeah. So it's not outrageous geographically. It's a known trip for people in that area to drive. So I think that makes sense.
Royals fans have been dealing with the Twins. That's not crazy. So
yeah, I think Minnesota is the one that's a little bit of a stretch, but I'm with you. Fuck those guys. Get them out of our division.
And I kind of finagled this so they wouldn't be in our division, but I'm not sure that Major League Baseball is going to see it the same way. So that was my solution, at least. But this is our fucking podcast. Like, we can do whatever the fuck we want.
I mean, really, in the next division, the ultimate division of the podcast division, as we're calling, we're going to call this.
Yeah, we could.
It's not the Midwest division; it's the enemy of my enemy division.
I like it.
Would consist of the first three teams there's no way they wouldn't be in the same division in a realignment because of mileage. I mean, it's an hour and a half drive. You've got Milwaukee, the Cubs, and the White Sox. This is where the coin toss happens because the Tigers and Minnesota, it's probably kind of equidistant, right?
This is what makes me sad, but I think Minnesota's probably going to get absorbed into this 4-team division instead of the Tigers, because it's weird. The Tigers don't really have a geographic rival. Like, when they started doing a couple of years ago, maybe they still do it, but they kind of called it rivalry weeks when they would do interleague play. And a lot of them made perfect sense. Obviously Cubs Sox, but they kept putting the Tigers with Pittsburgh. And it's like, I don't think about Pittsburgh. Like, no one from Detroit thinks of Pittsburgh as a rival, but then you think there's no real National League rival or close rival other than what they have in their own AL Central division.
Right.
I guess I put together and this is where I was coming up with different ideas for this podcast. Actually, they all border on Lake Michigan. All fan bases are all, obviously Detroit, Chicago, and Milwaukee. They're all everyone is on Lake Michigan. And I've heard of people call Lake Michigan the third coast. So I was thinking about proposing the idea of calling this podcast the Third Coast Bias, but that's just kind of lame. So I like the hostility of enemy of my enemy a lot better than that. So, but I guess geographically, that's what I would point to. They all border on Lake Michigan, but I fear our ultimate awesome division lineup will not happen. But it would be so fucking cool if it did. What do we got next? You there?
Oh yeah. Sorry. We're switching over to the Eastern Conference, the Midwest Division, which would consist of Cleveland.
The Mid-East Division, just so there wouldn't be.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Mid-East Division. Did I say Midwest? Sorry.
Yeah, I think I might have had a typo in there too, because it's a weird. I don't know if it's a real term, but I just didn't want the same division names in any conference, so I just made up Mid-East. I'm not even sure if that's a real geographic destination, but
Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Toronto.
That one I think makes sense. Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. Toronto is obviously the outlier, but Toronto is going to be problematic no matter where you put them, unless potentially Montreal was an expansion team, which throws this all out of the water. So that's the only one. Toronto's the only thing I'm dissatisfied. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati have been in the same division. They're close geographically. Obviously, putting the two teams in Ohio in the same division makes sense. So
yeah, I mean, the thing this all comes down to for when baseball does this, but they should take our recommendations, by the way, if anyone from MLB is listening, at least keep them.
Let's get more seriously that now that we're not called Major League A-holes.
Yeah, take the Midwest division as is. What you do with the rest of it, that's fine. But just keep the Midwest division.
That's kind of how I approach this whole subject.
All right, continuing in the Eastern Conference, we have the Northeast Division, which is
barn burner.
Boston Red Sox, the Yankees, the Mets, and the Phillies. I mean, I think that is the division, honestly. How
fucking cool would that be? I hate all those teams, but that is putting them all in a blender.
Oh, my God. And the Phillies and New York already hate each other.
Oh, yeah.
I was at an interleague game in New York against the Phillies and the Yankees, and I sat in the fucking bleachers at that game. And it was ugly. Yeah. I mean, it was ugly.
I call it the blender division. They're just going to murder each other.
That's great. That would be
fantastic.
Yes. The Mid-South division could also be characterized as maybe the who cares division. the Braves, the Orioles. This is the disappointment division.
Yeah.
These are the teams
They always fail.
look like they are going to turn the corner and never do. The Braves, the Orioles, the Nationals, and either Nashville or Raleigh.
Yeah, that's where those two different expansion options fit nicely into that one division, sort of like how I did with the Northwest. I think Nashville's coming. I think that's going to be obvious, and I think that the Braves would be a natural rival. It's a little bit of a stretch for Baltimore and Washington to be connected to the Braves and Nashville, but I think that's why I just call it the Mid-South, because geographically it makes it make some sense at least.
Yeah, and then we have the South Division, which I think this makes a lot of sense. Could also be like the Panhandle Division or something.
Yeah.
Houston, Texas, Tampa Bay, and Miami. I mean, that is geographically. I mean, those are going to be all short fucking trips, man.
Yeah, it's the Gulf Coast division, basically.
Yeah,
it's
Gulf Coast. Yeah,
Texas versus Florida. I think you have to have the Astros and Rangers in the same division, obviously, and then I mean, you have to throw the two Florida teams together, and I think those are the kind of what was left over. So that's how I put them together in the South. Orlando is rumored to be a latecomer to this expansion talk, but Florida can't get a fucking third major league franchise. I think that's outrageous. They can barely support the two they have. Or if anything, I think Tampa might, if the stadium deal doesn't get done, maybe it is getting done. I'm not sure where they're at. Yeah. I think Tampa would make sense to move to Orlando because it's more of a destination. But the other rumors I've seen is Austin, which would put them in the same division too. But I think Austin would be down the list of potential expansion franchises. So is that it? Did we get through all 8 divisions?
We got through all 8 divisions. You do, because Smitty, like I said, is
I took this to the full extent.
He also has mapped out the proposed schedule on how you would play.
Yeah, so you've got 3 teams in your division. So I propose you play them 14 times each, which would be 2 4-game series and 2 3-game series, home and home. So that's a total of what?
42
games right there, which is kind of close to what they're playing now in your division, now that they've reduced it from the imbalanced schedule. It used to be 19 games versus your division opponents. Now it's down to 12 or 13. So this would push it back up to 14, which is, I don't think, unreasonable. Then what did I have? You've got the other teams in your conference.
Yeah, so you've got 6 games against them, 1 home, 1 away, I guess, is how you do that.
2 3-game series. And that
times
would be
12.
Yep.
72.
So yeah, most of your games would be played, a vast majority of your games would be played in the west half of the United States or the east half of the United States, which would dramatically cut down on travel costs. And that's what they're getting at. So I think that part's reasonable. And then you have your intra-conference interleague play, essentially East versus West, which is you'd play each team 3 times. So you'd get 1 home series 1 year, and then the other team would have the home series the next year. That's times 16. So 3 times 16.
48.
48. And guess what? That all adds up to 162 games.
Woot woot.
See how I did that? It's all nice. It's one wrapped up into one neat little package. I think it works. I think I've thought this through.
There you go. I think I'm putting in to supersede Rod Manfred in 2029, Commissioner of Baseball Ryan Smith.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take it. I've got the time. Apparently. Well, this was fun. We haven't talked baseball in a bit. We had these big changes on the horizon. I think this is the right time to do it. I feel good about it. I think you're excited about it. We'll see if anyone else is excited about it. But I guess we've never really cared about that.
Yeah, we got to keep it going for, keep it the way we want to keep things. So
yeah, and maybe since we changed the name, maybe you can talk to your buddy Len Casper, and you won't be embarrassed to tell him what the name of your podcast is, and he might even join us sometime.
Maybe he will. Maybe I'll start tapping into my White Sox network when I go to these big events, these black tie events. Yeah.
I've got a whole winter coming up. Might be working on some merchandise that we could put for sale, and I could get you free samples of, so you could sport that stuff at these White Sox events.
That's right.
get the name out there and not offend anyone right off the bat.
Not walk in with a major league a-hole shirt on.
I am an asshole.
Hey, we want to come on our podcast?
All right. Well, with that, I think we can wrap up. I'm still calling this episode 176. I'm not starting this back to number 1.
No, this is 176.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work over the years, so I'm not going to erase all of that. So this wraps up episode 176 of Enemy of My Enemy. You can find us on all social media channels at Enemy Ball, and you can find us on the web at enemyball.com. And you can find this podcast anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. So with that...
A what?
A podcast.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to declare this podcast is over. Peace.
Peace.
One guy poured beer all over my head. The guy said, how can you take that? I said, look, that man didn't do nothing. He poured some beer on my head. He's just showing he's a White Sox fan. There ain't nothing wrong with that.
Sparky, a million thanks for, as always, the most interesting interview. And now today, let's just have a lot of thrilling baseball and not so many fisticuffs.
Word hole